I think that we know what to do.
Good evening and welcome to the Monday, August 14th, Muscatine School District Board of Education meeting. Madam Secretary, can you please take roll and help us determine the quorum, please?
Sure. Directors Connard.
Here.
Cooney. Here. DeBeat.
Here.
LaRue.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
Sure.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight, the pledge will be by Muscatine High School Boys Cross Country Team. Can you please stand?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Muscatine High School Boys Cross Country Team. Thank you. You did a good job. Well, the next item on our agenda is to welcome everybody, welcome our visitors here and the media representatives. With that, we move into next item, which is Citizen Speaks. If anyone in the audience wants to address the board, please step to the podium, state your name and address. Obviously, you will have 3 minutes to talk. Per Iowa code, we cannot respond or engage in any discussion during the board meeting. Saying that doesn't mean you cannot communicate with us outside the board meeting. You can call us, you can email us, and we can engage with you in any discussion, but not during the board meeting.
Hello.
I'm Charnay from Brooklyn, and here's Papa's.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. I put my speech on top just in case you guys are hard of hearing.
That's good. We can share.
First, please, if you state your name and address so that our secretary can record that, please.
Charnay Brown, and I provided my...
Can you go, please, to the microphone?
My bad. My name is Charnay Brown, and I can give you my address later, but I am from Clinton, Iowa. Whenever.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Oh, no, sorry, this is in the way. Okay. Good evening, Muscatine School Board members. My name is Charnay Brown, and I'm here this evening to speak on something highly important and acknowledge your community's past and current choices. I was one of the many who witnessed last month's display of your community's take on paying homage to the genocide of indigenous people. Consciously, your community members decided to play dress up and mock traditional Native American garb, parade through town conquered in bondage, while simultaneously celebrating the 4th of July. Now, if your community members had decided to advocate for MMIW, Missing and Murdered Indigenous People, or the Every Child Matters movement, that would have been commendable. However, they decided to use the opportunity for something egregious. I read the statement provided by Mayor Brad Bark and President of GMCCI. Quote, GMCCI does not condone this behavior and that this entry does not represent our community. Their intention was to pay homage to the Cherokee Nation on how unjustly they were treated, end quote. I would like to take a moment to clarify that part that states this entry does not represent our community. That's just incorrect. This type of display is rooted in your community. Please refer to the samples I provided for you tonight. The first photo, dated 1922, is a child in blackface with a white male titled A Raspberry and a Blackberry. Second photo, dated 1961, are a group of students in blackface. Third photo, dated 1981, a student imitating a Native American during a, quote, powwow. Fourth photo, dated 1981, a shirt with a caricature of a Native American. Fifth photo, dated 1982, a senior float proudly displaying the Confederate flag. Sixth photo, dated 1988, another caricature of a Native American as Mojo the mascot. And seventh photo, dated 2007, student in blackface at a game when your school colors are purple and gold. These are just a fraction of the collection of your school has contributed to the disease of racism and still are. And I am speaking of your school's current logo. The Sac and Fox tribe of Iowa, who I do not represent, have made a public statement regarding logos such as yours. On the third packet provided, titled A Special Message and Invitation on School Mascots, the last paragraph on the first page, Iowa and Sac Fox tribes are quoted against the use of Native American terms, images, or symbols for sports or other marketing uses, end quote. You can downplay it and make remarks that it's just an arrow with feathers. However, this is an arrow and feathers that derive from a culture you did not and do not have permission to take from. Ultimately, our interests should be all the same. No other thought should occur. Your school prides itself on respect, and that is all the Sac and Fox tribe are asking of. Stand in solidarity with the Iowa tribe and do the respectful action and retire your school's logo. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to address the board? Again, please state your name and address so that we can record that in our file.
Good evening. I'm Louise Monday. I am the owner of Miss Louise School of Dance at 500 Sycamore in Muscatine. I am here basically as a follow-up to the auditorium at the Muscatine Performing Arts Center. Just kind of, I've met with people over the last 6 months trying to get a direction as to what's next for the auditorium and where the funding is going to go and what's first as far as the needs of the auditorium so that we can move forward. Not just regarding my dance school or other dance schools, the musicals, the band performances. We've had Simon Estes, one of the most profound operatic baritones that has sung all over the country, perform in that auditorium. Not just the Joffrey Ballet or anything to do with music. So the school, I don't know what the percent is that utilizes that particular auditorium because it's either that or the high school. And we have 1,100 seats in Central and less than half of that over at the high school. So I know there's monies there, and I guess my question is making sure that whatever money we do have to renovate, I realize we can't do it all at once. I've been in that auditorium on the first round with Stanley's when we took out the wood seats and we didn't have a proscenium. But the sound is so important to anything that our students in the community, or if we bring someone in to perform, it's just lacking so horribly. And whether it's a microphone, the sound that bounces off of it from the stage, the lighting is very, very, it needs to be updated desperately. I had one of the students up in the catwalk, and it's lacking so much. So I don't know what the priority as far as the board is and what they're looking at for the funding for this and what's going to happen first. But I just wanted to do a follow-up because I did go over and meet with Ryan Castle and many other board members and people that are associated with different groups in the community to see what's possible. My last comment that I made to Ryan is that I know what the blocking is of what part of the building you want to retain. I think the arts was going to be saved. I still believe that the cafeteria, there's been many times when there's been a crossover with Park and Recs when I've been there, and nowhere for us to have any kind of rehearsal because there's nowhere to go if the gymnasium is booked. I ended up in the cafeteria one year, and this is my 45th year in Muscatine. So I've been through everything through that auditorium, and I know it back and front. I'm happy to volunteer and give anything that this committee needs to move forward or suggestions. I'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to address the board tonight? Again, I would like to remind the audience here and also those who are watching us on TV. remember, you can reach out to any of us as board members via phone calls, via emails, anything like that. So we always like to hear back from everybody. Thank you. With that, we move into next item, which is the board targets, goals report. Item A, students will graduate prepared for post-secondary options. Item B, Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably. And item C, students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. Moving with that, we move into our superintendent updates, please.
Thank you, John. Just a few things tonight to update you on. One, this morning we started a 2-day Muskie University for our new staff. So that was about 50 staff members. Had people from local businesses, the chamber, realtors, giving them information on the community. I'd say about a little more than half of those teachers are coming from outside of Muscatine. So we're always just excited to welcome them. Tomorrow they've got a bus tour of the community. They've got little, throughout the day as they're getting that information, little prizes and activities and lunches provided. And it's really just a great way to welcome them into the district and into the community. So we got a good start with that. And then Wednesday is our all staff returns. So we'll start in the Wednesday morning with super in-service, and that'll start with breakfast provided by Hy-Vee and Midwest One. And so that'll be for all of our staff, and we'll get the year kicked off. So we're excited to get things moving forward, get kids back into classrooms, and I know our staff are looking forward to getting back into the buildings. Also wanted to update you on our new website. So that will be rolling out Wednesday afternoon, evening. So that's been a year process working with the provider to help get that put together and designed. And so we're excited to have that rolling out on Wednesday. So also want to do a facility update. So I've asked Chris to come and just kind of update as we get to the bids later tonight, really talking about kind of what's next, kind of where we're at with our projects and what's coming up yet.
Yeah, so Clinton, I just wanted to run through kind of the current projects that we have going on, along with the things that we put out for bid and got bids back, some time frames of these things and when they're going to be finished, and then kind of the next steps on where we're going to go after this. So obviously we have Grant moving forward. They are, they have foundation pretty much done. There's not a lot of inside work, just a few small areas at Grant that are going to be redone. So that's off and running. Madison, same thing as Grant. They're kind of in the early stages. The emphasis for the construction people right now was at Clark because of the interior space at Clark. There was much more renovation than the interior spaces at Grant and Madison. So, a lot of the workers have been at Clark and trying to get that buttoned up. And as soon as that interior space gets done there, they'll move over and start some of the exterior building of walls at Madison and Grant. And just an update on kind of where we're at with our bond money. Those three controlled entrances came back to be about $5.6 million. That's just hard construction costs. I'll kind of give you the total costs of everything in a second. Jefferson bids went out and were accepted. The construction costs for that were at about $6.3 million. And then baseball and softball, which I think we'll talk about a little bit more later, came back, both fields plus the alternate bid with turf at Bruner at about $6.9 million. So just knowing that we kind of started with our bond at about $25 million to begin with, there's kind of where we're sitting at this point. Again, that's just hard construction. The design fees and furniture adds more to it. Some rough estimates of that are around 20.7 total cost incurred right now for all those projects, and that would be all in, pretty close to that. So timeframes here, the controlled entrances, like I said, the work's in progress. Like I said, the interior at Clark will be completed this week, I hope, before the kids get here. So the teachers obviously come back, the new teachers are here, and the rest of the teachers come Wednesday, so they may have to navigate around a few things, but it's really just that main hallway. Their classrooms are all cleaned and ready for the most part. There's a few that are affected, but we'll have it ready to go by the time the kids get there next week. The rest of the projects, completing the exterior, we're still looking at mid-December, and that'll give us some, hopefully then Christmas break to get furniture and those things and just get it all ready to go. So by second semester or January, we should have all of those things completed. Not a part of the bond, but the wrestling room is in progress as well at the high school. It's on track to turn over November 1st. Like the new kitchen, the rooftop unit is in delay. It's been delayed 5 times now. It's scheduled to be set sometime between the 24th and 30th of August if it doesn't get delayed again. So we'll see. Kitchen, same thing. We're really close in the kitchen. The floors are getting finished right now. They're just kind of tidying up some details in there. Again, the rooftop unit has been delayed. Sorry, I think I said that backwards. The rooftop unit has been delayed 5 times at the kitchen. The wrestling one just isn't going to be here until January. So those are long lead times right now for those. But we're looking at somewhere hopefully between the 1st and the 8th of having the kitchen turned over to us. And again, if that rooftop unit gets delayed again, that's going to push that date back, which created a little bit of a situation for us, but we've got it all figured out. Baseball, softball is going to start going over the next couple weeks. Working on getting the land, ready for putting in the bleachers and getting turf and all of those things. The completion date for both of those projects with turf is the end of April next year. So they should be ready hopefully by the season starts. A lot of that's spring weather, and hopefully that goes well. Jefferson is on the move. Russell is working right now to get things ordered. We got a little bit of demolition out back of Jefferson that we need to do. There's an old boiler room, and once that gets going, they're going to start with the land work, dirt work there. So that's ready to go. Okay, phase 2 projects. Okay, so skip all those other things. We go to phase 2. We're looking at tearing down the classroom portion at Central and building a parking lot to the on the left-hand side where the red dotted lines are. That would be the parking lot, and the part that would come down would be everything in blue there. Okay, so we would keep the existing auditorium, gym, and there's a few classrooms in the brown part right in the middle toward the left, top left. There's a few classrooms there's kind of a natural line there that we can tear it down on. What it does is where the blue part hits the brown part there, okay, that there will be a space there, so that space will have to be filled in and have some things done. But for the most part, that would be the first part of phase 2, and I'll talk about the time frame here in a second. And the yellow there is the new Jefferson wing, which will be scheduled to be completed next year too. And then we also have the athletic portions of Clark, so you can kind of see the controlled entrance on the right-hand side. The gym, much needed gym space for practicing. We'll hopefully provide 3 practice courts and then 1 full-size competition court in it. You can kind of see, and this isn't set in stone, this is just kind of a first rendering of it. There'll be a wrestling room in the top left corner of that. That's the bigger space. And then locker room spaces and restrooms and storage kind of are on the right hand side of that building. And then there also, you can see the track right now is a cinder track. It's very old, and we had 150 kids running track. So we will be pouring a hard surface track there as well to help benefit those kids. Timeframes here. So Central Phase 1 would be that first part I talked about, new parking lot, classroom demolition, exterior wall rebuild. Some tuck pointing is going to have to be done, and then any mechanical, electrical, plumbing modifications. You know, we're going to have to detach all of those things from the current building, basically, and put in all new things. So that'll be a part of Phase 1, just so we can have the building up and running still. The bid documents for that, we're planning on being to Russell by December 15th, and then will allow us to start in the spring, pending the weather there. The athletic complex at Clark, again, some of that's going to be dependent. We're not really sure on the square footage yet. That may have to be adjusted based on what the costs come back, estimated costs come back. But anywhere from like 18 to 25,000, and that's a pre-engineered metal building, just like the Van Heck Center. Van Heck Center is about 33,000 square foot, and this will, you know, max, this would be 25. It'll probably be a little bit less than that. I would say 20, 18, 19, that's kind of what we're shooting for. Bids to Russell at the end of January, and construction will start in the spring, and that will be done before the next school year. So we're still a little ways away for that, but it's much needed there. And then Central Phase 2 would be the interior improvements at Central, and what we want to do as far as lighting and, you know, seating and sound and all of those things will come when those other two things get the bids back, and we'll see where we're at and see what we can do for that.
Okay, I got a question for you.
So
Hey,
let me just,
that's my next slide.
let me make some clarifications first too. Just remember with Central, you know, the reason this was in Phase 2 is because we still have the centralized kitchen there, or we're still using that as a cooking kitchen. So we couldn't shut that down. We could not have done that in the first phase. And even now, as you're seeing, we wanted to be out of there by now. Well, we're not. And so there's a reason that that has been pushed back a little. So, you know, we should see, again, once we get these projects completed, we get the centralized kitchen up and running. Again, the first step will be to bring that kind of classroom portion down and get that parking lot. The way they will phase this out, the other thing that by doing it kind of in this timeline will, and this will be a priority for us, is maintaining our Spark program at Jefferson. So talking with Russell and with Leggett, they believe the way this is timed out, that they can have some of this work wrapped up before summer of next year. So that's not in the way of students, and also maintaining some of the play space in the back, even though they'll be building out the classroom portion of Jefferson. And then, so as we get that done, we know those buildings, the gym and the auditorium, get used a lot. So trying to kind of protect that for as long as we can and get things in place. And so we'll start probably later this fall bringing a group together, just like we did for the other projects, to talk about here's the potential budget that we have, and here are the needs, and how do we do that. So we're kind of planning on that process, and we'll do the same thing for Susan Clark for the gym there as well.
Well, actually, thank you, because that last part is what the concern area is for me, and that is because, as we all pretty well know, that for one reason or another, and I know sometimes it has to do with some of those plans on when things can get done, but it also seems that the arts gets the last of anything. And so when we look at what that budget is to do some of those things, you know, because as we talked about the lights and sound system and all of those kind of things, what money is actually earmarked for that? And, you know, did we kind of have an idea as in how much we thought it would be, maybe different than what it will be? So how do we look to have the monies to do what we need to do for that? And then if for some reason that budget falls lower than what the really need is for that, because we have done for the baseball diamonds, we taken and redoing Bruner Field, plus a new, baseball diamond with, certain amount of monies that way. So I just want to make sure that if there's any budget fall through, that we do know that there's people within the community that really support the arts, and at some point, if there is need, to make sure we bring them to the table as well. But I look forward to hopefully being on that committee, since my 35 plus years of doing theater myself. So we appreciate anything that you can do to make that all happen.
So right now, just from when we initially started conversations about this, what we had identified for Central was approximately $2 million. So there was about $500,000 dedicated to demolition, about $500,000 dedicated to parking lot, and then $1 million to renovations inside, wherever that goes. So what you know is what you saw tonight, all in with the current projects, we're at about 20 million, give or take. We bonded for 25, so we know we have $5 million. Plus, we've already been planning on, Tom, is it 3.2 million from save balance? 2.8, so close to 3 million in our save fund balance as well. So that puts us, almost at about $8 million for those projects, which, based on what the conversations we're having, we should be in a good place there, right? Again, coming back, and we'll share all that with the board, and ultimately you guys will make that determination. But I think from a budget standpoint, we'll be in a good place. But again, I think, the conversations being, we know, especially in some of the auditorium work, those lights, soundboards, all those, can get pretty expensive as well. So, the important thing is we're dedicated to maintaining that space. It'll be connected to Jefferson. So really at that point, it becomes like the overall Jefferson building, and they'll have access to that gym and auditorium as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're gonna have a significant cost savings too, just when we do get rid of Central. Obviously, it's very inefficient, and so that
Right now, we spend about $8,000 a month on utilities for that building.
Yeah.
And again, we have to, because we still have a kitchen that's there, right? You've got to heat it to at least, a certain degree, and you have to cool it to a certain degree. So, and then anything we do in renovations would be significantly more efficient moving forward.
I see that, the possession date for the wrestling room is going to be in November, so that's going to be right close.
Yeah,
right
they
when
usually
it
start
begins.
like the first week of November.
And I know the rooftop units are not going to be available, so we have some temporary things that are going to be.
Yeah, they're working on
efficient enough to-
temporary, they want warm rooms, so we know we've got to get some decent-sized temporary heating in there to do that.
I know
Actually brings up a good question, because you said some of these, the security, because for the buildings, and so that you have some alternative ways then for people to get into the buildings while those are still being worked on? Do you
Yeah,
have a
so
plan for that?
there
There's
are,
temporary entrances for each building set right now. We worked with the principals and kind of came up with the best plan of route for that, and we've done some different things, like we put at Susan Clark and at Grant, we put a ring camera, because there's no camera, so there's a little ring there, they can press it and they'll be able to see who comes to the door, because they didn't have access to be able to view them, just for a security purposes. But yeah, so we've kind of come up with a plan with the principals of all buildings.
and that's been communicated to parents so that they know new traffic patterns, and I'm sure there'll be some hiccups there as we navigate that.
So are Grant and Madison, are they pretty much the same as far as on, because I drove by Grant, and it looked like it was a little bit ahead of where Madison is to me.
Yeah, it's a little bit ahead. They had a little bit more interior stuff, so they just naturally, got some more completed there. But everything's still on track for December.
I think we anticipate for Grant and Madison as well, those rooftop units being in January, so we'll probably have to do some,
Grants are done. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, those are done. Grants are done.
are the rooftop units?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't have any issues with.
They'll be set?
HVAC, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
does the road construction on Fulham have you guys got plans for Susan Clark and McKinley or bus routes?
I
Or
talked to the city yesterday. They're going to have the road open by first day of school.
Okay.
On the Susan Clark, at one point you had a new driveway going from the gym all the way out to the other neighborhood towards Hauser. Is it still planning, or is that been scrapped?
Nah, yeah, I think
buses.
I'm gonna let Chris answer
yeah,
that.
I have a lot of experience with this. We kind of went away. After we've trained, and just talked through the traffic patterns and got people to kind of use some of the side streets. Really, our traffic got a lot better over the last year or so. It was just that initial when we, moved all the 7th and 8th graders there. It was just jam packed. So it's actually better. Plus, our when we started Susan Clark, we had 760 kids, and this year we have 611. So just a natural decline in enrollment has reduced some of that traffic issues. But yeah, if Fulham and Kindler wasn't going to be open, we'd have serious problems, but they assured me it was going to be open, so it should be good.
Do you have a plan if it's not?
He told me it was going to be done. So.
You're a trusting young man.
Yeah.
Any other question for Chris?
I think that, I know that when the demolition of Central becomes apparent and when we're going to do that, I think that, I've had a couple of old-time people approach me and ask for a tour of the building before they see where they got in trouble or whatever, so.
Yeah, I would just have them, if they just want to call out to them, stop out to maintenance and talk to Joe
And I think we're also going to have some opportunities, and I believe they did this with the old Jefferson building before it was torn down, for people to come in, and there's lots of woodwork and lockers and cabinetry and things that people might want, speakers that are, on the wall and those kind of things, and have some type of process for auction for some of those items as well, which is another opportunity for them to just get in the building again. So we'll have some of those opportunities for sure.
And Denny brought up a good question with that, because it's my 50th class reunion coming up in September, and I've been asked about making sure that we can get into the building, so I'll look forward to that.
Yeah, sure, just reach Jill and she'll set us up. And if any of you guys want to come walk through any of the construction projects, just let me know.
But we can't start taking things off the wall and stuff.
No, if you just want to go see
Not
Clark
yet,
or-
Karen.
You don't get first pick.
So would you rather the baseball, softball questions come later, if we have anything?
If you have some right now, we can
I just
certainly
wanna,
have.
you know-
We'll have an opportunity to talk about it when we get there as well, so it's up to you.
Yeah. I guess notice that, like for the softball project, is that parking, and is it a drive around? Is that what that was, a picture that we saw? Is that correct? Can you go back to that at all?
Oh, yeah. Yes, it is a drive around.
Right down there on the
Right here,
right-hand
yeah.
side?
It's just a drive around with some pull-in parking there.
Okay, and that's,
Some handicap parking as well.
okay, mainly for handicap parking and
Yeah.
whatever?
And
Okay,
we would
then-
we'd also have access to the maintenance parking. We'll have to figure out a way to manage that a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And ensure that, people that are unable to walk or
Oh, yeah.
have a tough time to get up there.
Yeah, make sure, I think that hopefully the coaches will be on board with keeping the girls not
Yeah,
parking in
right,
those
that's gonna
areas.
be the big thing.
And obviously, when they practice, they can park down there, but when they, games. And now, is that the building right there, is that the concessions?
Yep, concessions would be right here.
Okay, and then we're gonna have like, I know it's gated all the way around there, but is there gonna be concessions, windows on
Yeah.
this side, so for football?
Correct, yeah. So football will come in order to
Restrooms
use
and
this, football will
concessions.
come through this gate. This will keep this secure here. There's a gate, a fence and a gate here, and the concession windows on this side of the building right there.
Okay, I think that's gonna be a great asset.
Yeah.
For our
Restrooms will be accessible too,
visitors,
which is
instead of having
nice.
porta potties in a wood shed out there, now we're gonna have something
Yeah.
that's first class, so. Okay,
The only other thing that I would just add is, I think working with Russell and with Leggett, it's been a great partnership with both of them, as we looked at, I think the amount of bidders that have come in, the work that they've done together to clarify any questions and bring people to the table has helped us get, I think, really competitive bids on all these projects. So I really appreciate the work that they've done. So I think that's been a good move for us.
And again, we were only able to borrow 25 million going out to 2031, but if we were to extend that, we can. go out
Actually, it
to
goes till 29, I believe, and then, there you go.
We have the opportunity to
29.
extend that to 2015.
So
correct?
this fall in November, we'll have a, in the election, we'll have that revenue purpose statement. So initially, that revenue purpose statement was good through 2030, which is why when we could borrow this time, we could only borrow out through 2030. The legislature has extended the save dollars as like guaranteed. They'll be doing that through 2050. So what this revenue purpose statement does is now extend that same revenue purpose statements, how we're going to spend the money that we receive from the state for this, out through 2050. And so really that specifies paying down debt, which like we're using our saved dollars to pay down the bonds that we're using for this, and it's facility projects. So it clarifies that. So once we have that, then we'll be able to bond out through that 2050 for the next round of projects, whatever.
The phase 2 and further,
Yep.
which could go to help the auditorium and other activity. So very important to get that passed.
Yep.
Great discussion. Any more questions? Well, Chris, thank you, and Clint, thank you. And I do agree, I second what you just said about Russell and Leggett. I mean, they keep me busy. I get a couple contracts daily from them that I have to look at and sign, and so that they can move forward with all these projects. So thank you for all this discussion. If there is no other question, we move forward with our agenda and we move into next item, which is action, possible action. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless Director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. The items are, number 1, minutes, number 2, bills and claims, number 3, employment recommendations, number 4, MOU with Shared Visions partners, number 5, statewide voluntary preschool program contracts, number 6, food service vendor extensions, number 7, MCSD hourly staff handbook, number 8, MEA employee handbook, number 9, Rock Valley physical therapy, number 10, board policies, minor, mandatory, and or required by law, number 11, special services contract with Durant, and number 12, educational contract with college community. What are the wishes of the board?
John, I'd like to see if we could pull, grammatically, I think there's a problem with 505.4, student medication administration. It should be simple, but I think that it just reads funny. So if we could pull that, I'd appreciate it.
So you're asking to pull which item? I'm sorry.
In letter K, the approved changes policy for the minor mandatory required by law, 505.4, student medication administration.
So you are talking about pulling out item 10, the
So
board
just
policies?
to clarify, are you motioning to approve the consent agenda with removing that particular item?
I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda sans 505.4, student medication administration.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of, it goes back to item 10. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I also would like to, I don't want to pull the handbooks, but I do think that if we're going to use the authority of the school board, because I know that that there's this muddled gray line if the handbooks are policy or if they're management. And as a school board, we deal with policy. We do not deal with management. We are not in the buildings. That's administrators. That's our directors. They take care of that side of it. But if this is going to move forward and we're going to use the authority of the school board, which is put into each one of the handbooks, then I think that we need to have a bigger involvement and it needs to start earlier. So as we move forward, that needs to start happening in April, May. It needs to probably be something that, this needs to be a living document. It's going to change. We know things are coming from the state. That's going to be a living document. So we probably should have a committee that does nothing but go over this monthly or weekly or I don't care how often, but we just, if we're going to use our authority and put our authority into this, we need to take more active roles in it. So that, if that's just a statement, it's nothing more than that. I still think we're at the place where it is. People have spent a lot of time and did a lot of work with this. I just think as a school board, we'd like to have more representation in it if it's that fine line. So with that said, I'm done.
Any other point? Any other discussion? So we have a motion and we have a second. Let's first of all move forward with the vote on this. So all those of you who are in favor of accepting the consent agenda with the exception of removing that particular law, which is part of item 10, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, motion carried. So now, since we are pulling this item out, so we need to figure out, so it comes later on. I'm trying to figure out the right
I think you can
place for it.
have a discussion about it now and then motion and approve based on that discussion.
Okay, so since
All right, so since I brought this up, if you read through the second highlighted part, that full sentence, it
And
says
you're on 505.
on 505.4, student medication administration. The second part of it, or the sentence reads, a person administering the medication, blah, 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 blah. And it says medication, the person that, basically it says a person that is going to administer it has to have a successfully completed medication administration course conducted by a registered nurse or pharmacist that is provided by the Department of Education. So I don't believe that the Department of Education is going to supply a registered nurse or a pharmacist. I understand what we're talking about is the course is created by the Department of Education, but the way this reads is that the registered nurse or pharmacist that is provided by the Department of Education. So that grammatically is incorrect. We're not going to be able to follow this policy ever because that's not going to be, unless I'm misreading this.
The way I would read that is that the course is taught by a registered nurse or pharmacist provided by the Department of Education. So it's a training program the Department of Ed would sponsor. They would provide a nurse, registered nurse or pharmacist to teach that so that anyone certified then can.
So the way that the policy is enforced right now, so I have administered medication in the buildings, and most of our principals have probably administered medication in the buildings. They've gone through a course that has been provided by the registered nurse in their building, I'm guessing. That's the way it would happen to me. It wasn't provided by somebody that was at the Department of Education. I had to sit down with them and go through a training with them, hands-on training. They gave me, how do you administer an EpiPen, and I had to show them how to do that, and they went through that. If I'm wrong with that, great. If that reads correctly, to me it just read like.
Jamie, do you know, or?
This is the same word that ISB sample has. I'm not saying that it's grammatically correct, but it is the one that they've recommended the changes that we made. So I don't know if you want to, Jamie, if you want to talk about it.
Yes, so the medication administration class is online through the AEA, which is an approved DE course. And then once you complete that, then you have to do your hands-on with the registered nurse, usually in the building, who signs off that you've gone over the physical hand-to-hand occurrences.
Does that need to be part of this then? If that's the practice that we have, do we need to include that in our policy? Shouldn't our policy match our practice?
Yeah, so I think, just rereading.
And that's why I
this
said,
again.
that's why this is muddled in my mind. And I might be that I'm just reading it and I
I
can't
think
get
it's just
past
reading
it.
that the course that they go through has been, right? And then our process, our procedure is a record of the course completion is maintained by the school. And that's where it's done by the school nurse.
I'm not trying to cause a problem. I want to make sure that whatever our policy is, it doesn't come back and bite us later that, hey, you're not following your policy. And if it seems unclear to me who has practiced it, who's been part of it in a building, then I think it would probably be unclear to others that are not in the same frame of mind that I am.
Mike, if I'm not sure if I'm all the way there, but, because the first line says persons administering the medication. So, in other words, are you saying that should be somewhat changed? Because, in other words, who are all the different ones, like administrators?
No,
nurses, all?
what it's saying is the persons that are administering, like I don't have a medical background, but I was able to administer medications because I'd gone through this training course and I'd gone through the trainings. That's what that's addressing, right? So that happens in our buildings because we don't have nurses in every building, but we do have children who need to have medications throughout the day in every building.
So can I just clarify too? This is stating that that training is conducted by someone provided by the Department of Education. The training that you mentioned that's certified by the Department of Education, does that fit? Is that true then?
It goes through the AEA.
It goes through the AEA, so we have to go through the medication administration course that the DE allows. Right now, that's through the AEA. And so whenever they make changes, we would just have to follow that. So my suggestion would be that we say we're going to follow DE guidance
Yeah,
on that.
perfect.
Wherever they change, then we're covered. Right now, as it stands, it's 2 prongs. So I've taken the medication class. I've never actually gone through and done the hands-on with a nurse because I'm not in a building. So that currently is the practice, and that's the practice I would say most districts take.
So if we change that wording, because
Like I said, I'm just bringing it up to people's attention. To me, it was just confusing, and I'm like, I don't believe the Department of Education is going to provide a registered nurse or a pharmacist. And that's the way it reads to me, that the administration will be conducted by a registered nurse or pharmacist. That is provided by the Department of Education. That's what it says. That is provided by the Department of Education.
But the way I read it is that they're providing a registered nurse or pharmacist for the course that our administrators are taking. Is that not what you see?
but that's not what they're doing.
Pardon me?
That's not what they're doing though either.
Well, I know, that's
Right,
what,
yeah.
but if that's the policy,
That's
that's
how
what
I
we
read
need
it too.
yeah.
Yes.
Do you have other language? Did you write down something to show what you?
That part I can tell you that I wouldn't do. I wouldn't take our language here. If it needs to go back to a lawyer, or it needs to go to the DE, then the DE needs to, whoever's writing this probably needs to look at it and go, okay, is this exactly what it means to say? And is that person, is there a registered nurse or a pharmacist that provides this to everybody? Maybe maybe they're the ones that are the videotape of them online. And then I would just say it will be online and don't say it's a registered nurse or a pharmacist. What if it's a doctor next year? What if it's somebody else?
Well, one of the things we can do is you can approve the rest of the
Yep.
policies. We can table this one and come back to it at the next meeting. We'll get some clarification from the state on it.
And we're talking about tabling 505.04E1, right?
And I think that
Tabling that.
I think that we,
There's the legal
Did we
brief
vote-
action thing on the bottom.
did we vote to move everything but 505.4? I don't know if that's already done. So that's already been removed. That was the only one that was removed. We've already passed everything else, so.
Okay,
We
so.
don't need to spend a
so-
lot of time on
we
this
are
because we're not going
tabling
to resolve
that.
it.
Yeah,
item
so there
until the
is
next
no
meeting.
action needed right now, so if we table this particular one for maybe
Bring it.
next board meeting, we'll have more clarification. Okay, so thank you for this discussion and for all these points. So we move forward into the next item on our agenda, which is to approve the student handbook for 2023, 2024. What are the wishes of the board?
make the motion to approve the student handbook for 23-24 school year.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion?
I would just reiterate what I said about the other handbooks. I think that this falls into the same type of thing. I think if we're going to be involved and it's going to have our authority or have our name on it, we need to be more involved moving forward. So.
And one of the things, Mike, that I would like to say, number one is the student handbook will be a fluid document. So whatever we or the board approve tonight, it's not going to be set in stone. This is a fluid document. That's number one. Number two, we are still waiting, or the district still waiting for some guidance from the Department of Education. So when these items comes forward, it might also change some of the language of this student handbook. I'm not quite sure if we need to reapprove it or not at that point, but it might be simple a change, it might be major change. We don't know, but I do agree with you. That's part of the reason why it's in front of us now as a board to basically make decisions and either approve or not approve what we see in front of us right now.
I guess I just have a question about the cell phone policy. I think that it's worked out well for the junior high, the way they've had their cell phone policy. Is there a reason why we don't have that in the high school part too?
And again, this is something that we've been working on and talking about for a while. In working with the high school and Ryan Castle working with his building leadership team, they feel like the policy as it's currently written is not being enforced. And again, that's both because teachers, if they would turn something in, may not be getting support from administration and might not know they're supposed to do that. So again, coming in new, he would like to get his arms around this, work with his whole staff on clarifying expectations, also meaning that from an admin standpoint, we need to support teachers and staff who are enforcing this policy. And then as we move through the year, determine if any additional changes are needed. And in relation to the handbook, it should be a living document, and we've had to make changes in the past based on things that are needed, legislative updates. There might be court cases that better define things, and we have to make adjustments to it. We know that discipline component, which is a big one in this handbook, we still need significant guidance on. What that ends up looking like, we don't really know yet, right? So it could be small changes, could be big changes. I think either way, we bring it back to the board and keep you posted on what those things are. We will, whatever is approved tonight, we will share with parents tomorrow through Parent Square, because as part of that legislative update, we're required to have parents acknowledge they've received a copy of it. It will also be posted prominently on the website so that it's easy to find and easy to access. In this new website, again, we will have a section just for required posting. So anything that's in statute or law that is required to be posted on the website will be on that page, which you'll be able to access through a variety of ways on the site to make it, again, as easy as possible for people to see that. Moving forward, the handbook will be a part of the registration process, and so that when a parent registers, either a new registration or returning student, one of the pages will be the handbook, and they'll be required to acknowledge they've seen it before moving on in the registration process. And that's how we'll get that documentation that people have seen it and acknowledge that. So.
I will add to that from the standpoint that we had a great conversation at community conversation tonight, because that was a part of our discussion of what was going on with the phone issue and such. And I think there was some good questions and such around all that. And so as we move forward, hopefully those are also helpful for us. And Have you ever thought about, as in from the student standpoint, how are they looking at it? What are their thoughts on what they, would want to have for cell phone
I have a pretty good idea
privileges?
what they would want for a cell phone policy.
And that's part of the point. But
I'd agree with what they
But
want.
if they're presented with it from a way that says, because we do know that there's kids in the classroom that want to learn and everything, and it's the ones that are being disruptive for, like whatever reason that makes it hard for them. So I think it wouldn't hurt to at least maybe see what their thoughts on it is too. And then secondly, is I wanted to make sure a big out to Daphne and staff, as in putting this all together. This was the third draft of it, at least the third that I was aware of. And everybody went pretty well over this as much as we could in all many different ways. And as Clint has said, it's still going to end up being a working document, but at the same time, I'm very proud of what we were able to take and put together up to this point.
And again, I think that important point, the things when we're hearing about cell phones being disruptive in the classroom, that would fall under the policy the way it's currently written. So we have to enforce that. We also have to support teachers when they're taking phones, and that, obviously, that's an important part of the process.
Teachers also have the option to go beyond this, don't they? As far as when they come in their classroom, they can say, okay, I have these row of cubbies here. I got 20 kids. I have 20 slots. Put your cell phone in here. That's your number. You come and you take that out as you leave, but you're going to put it in as you come in the door.
Yep.
They have that option, correct?
They do.
However, I think also for the, I would call it research purposes, if a teacher wants to give the students in his or her class maybe 10 minutes to research something. For educational purposes, I think students should be able to use the cell phone. So we cannot have it as more like a black or white. I mean, there are a lot of gray areas too that we need also to give the teachers in the classroom, I would say, more flexibility. Also within whatever rule that that they come up with, and we also approve as a school board. But those are situations where we need also to think about that. I mean, in my classrooms, I depend heavily on phones for students to go back. Yes, it's a college level classrooms, but still, we use it a lot when we research things in a classroom setting. So these are things I think we need to also consider as we're setting or finalizing that language. So.
But the teacher also has the option to, if they see that the kid is not
Yes.
on task or on researching what they're supposed to be researching, they can remove that.
Definitely.
They have laptops as well.
Right, we need to consider that we spend a lot of money to make sure that everyone has a school-issued device as well. So anything that's being done could be done on that as well. So as this is approved tonight, because I do think that it probably needs to be, but I think that those working parts for me in general would be that cell phone and telephone use, because our district has also invested in looking at some of the mental health and the role that social media and access to screens and telephones and the outside world of predators and everything else. We're setting ourselves up to not follow our own advice in some regards. And so that needs to be an ongoing conversation that I think we continue to have. We're recognizing it at the elementary and junior high. I really love the way that it was laid out in the junior highs section. It's very clear. People know the expectation. We can follow the rules when we know exactly what's expected of us. That part's not difficult, I don't think. The other thing, too, I would ask that maybe we just default on the student appearance section on the head coverings. I know I've talked about that a lot, but we could even leave it stricken for now. But I would like to discuss with our security teams their thoughts and feelings, and maybe even looking at a third party resource too with our police department on what does that do for student safety, substance use, and being able to identify in the event of an incident where we would need to look at some of the students. Because I think it's so interesting that our middle school security teams almost feel opposite of our high school security teams. So I would like a little bit more guidance on that, so.
The only thing other than too is with the cell phone, I like to just the fact that I'm great that it's highlighted here in yellow because of how it was put. And that's because it's talking about no time are students or visitors authorized to photograph video. So can you explain that out a little bit more
Say
on
that
that topic?
last part again.
Yeah.
Can you explain again what you're
She said that there's, in the policy, it states that there's no, at no time is anyone authorized to videotape anything. So if there's a fight, an example would be if there was a fight, then people are not supposed to be videotaping it.
Yep.
They're not supposed to be posting it, which happens, and you have to deal with it.
And I think that comes to consent, that another student cannot actually give you consent to publish a video of them, as well as privacy rights of everybody else, so.
I think Ryan's going to have a task for him to communicate with his staff that they need to follow the policy, and he needs to communicate with his administrators that they need to follow up and have consequences for that policy. So,
and I've made it very clear with Ryan that obviously he knows this is an important issue. We've heard from staff, we've heard from students, we've heard from parents and community, and where you fall as a board on this. And so, you know, there is an expectation that this improves, and that'll be up to his team and his staff to do that. And I think there's an opportunity for us to come back and share, you know, here's how it's going.
I think there's communication too there to the parents, because they can also help in this situation.
Yeah.
They're the ones
Absolutely.
paying for the plan, they have parental control over those phones, they can monitor or lock them down during those school times, so that additional help from the parents and taking on that action would help
And Matt,
schools also.
I don't even know if I want to step into this bucket. If we truly believe that parents are the primary educators of their kids, it doesn't matter what we're doing, whether it's cell phones, books, or anything else, then the parent should be the one that is saying, hey, you don't need to take your phone to school. Hey, I don't want you reading this book. Hey, if we believe that, and we need to support that. But it shouldn't be a role that's taken on by, I believe very firmly in a very limited handbook. If you're going to put something in a handbook, you need to be able to follow it. And you better follow it to a T. But you can't put every single thing into a handbook. And the more pages that you put to the handbook, the more power, I would guess, for lack of a better word, that gives to the people who say, well, it's not in the handbook. You didn't put that in the handbook, so it must be okay. No, it's not okay just because of that. If you try to keep it simple and more general, it becomes much easier to enforce. And it's as simple as just be nice, just things like that. But if we truly believe that parents are the primary educators of their kids, which I do, then we need to support them and ask from their help. They can help us by, if this is the policy, don't put our teachers in a position, and they're going to be in a position where they're going to have a knockdown, drag-out fight. This is what's going to happen. We know it. We're adults. We've seen this. We've seen it with our own kids. If you try to take your kid's phone, they're going to argue with you. They're going to fight with you. But we don't want to have to put the teachers back onto that side of it. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a cell phone, because they are disruptive, and I would just soon not have any of them. I try not to carry mine. But I don't know. I don't want to go too far into this.
And I think based on this discussion, as we said, one is this document going to be a fluid document? Things going to most probably continue to change. Two, I think Ryan and his team at the high school now needs to, as we said, to look at this statement and the use of cell phones at the high school, modify, edit, change, and so on, and bring it back to us to look at it also for approval. And I trust that they will work very hard at the high school to come up with a very clear statement regarding the use of cell phones.
And maybe a way to reframe it too, from me to Ryan, is that as a board and administration, as superintendent, we support all of their efforts to eliminate distractions from the classroom, whatever that is, from cell phones to behavior, whatever that is. I know you as a board are very supportive of that, and I will make sure it's clear to Ryan, we support him in those efforts, and staff in those efforts.
Assuming we'll get updates on how that goes
Yes.
on the enforcement and
Yep.
Any more discussion? Great discussion tonight. Yeah. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, we had this discussion. So basically, we need to vote on that. All those in favor of approving the student handbook for 2023-2024 as it is right now, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you. Moving forward to next item on our agenda is to approve the contract award recommendation for Muscatine CSD softball field addition and baseball field renovation. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to approve the award recommendation for the Muscatine Community School District softball field addition and baseball field renovation.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion?
Yep, and again, this includes turfing, the baseball field
Yes.
also, correct?
It
With
does.
the synthetic turf. And it
And that-
was originally almost $10 million, I think is what it climbed to at one point.
Right, it was,
No,
yeah.
at one point we were,
9
well,
million,
when-
9.7.
that was when we were looking at kind of a combined field down at Bruner
Right.
and some-
Oh, yeah, that
working
was
with the
with-
city on that. And obviously, when we redid those designs and went to this Bruner and then high school approach, obviously those costs changed significantly.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, it was, you guys, excellent job of getting that whittled down and finding a home for the new softball diamond, so.
It was a lot of work on a lot of people's behalf, and a lot
I
of
just want
conversations.
to say also that I think that this is a project that our community is going to be proud of, that our school district can be proud of. It's going to be state-of-the-art. It's going to be probably probably up there with the best in the state that we have. Our girls just completed their 48th season, since its inception. And in that 48 years that they've played, they've only had 3 losing seasons. So I think this is high time that these girls have, our softball program can be, have their own field and be proud of it. So for 48 years, we've been using city-owned fields. So it's nice to have our own.
It'll be nice when the facilities match the play on the field. We've excelled at the play on the field. It'll be nice that we excel with our facilities.
Right.
I believe we have the coaches in place to do that, boys and girls.
I do have a question on the bid. For the alternate with the turf, on page 8, it says add $41,933. Where did that number come from? Because doesn't the turf actually add like 1 million?
Well, there's several areas. As you look through the bid sheets, it'll say base bid and alternate baseball turf, and then there's several different categories. So there may be areas where the site work impacts the turf. So like all those categories, electrical, so on. And there's actually a total lower. So that, I think, is a misprint.
Like I
right,
can't
in
find that number
portion,
anywhere.
yeah.
Okay. Because it's much more than
Oh, yes.
41,000.
Significantly more.
Okay.
When you can see in the
Yes.
one area,
That's 1,063,933.
just for the turf,
That's right.
like the layer of turf itself.
I don't want anyone to see that and think that we had to get an alternate bid for $43,000.
So Russell's pretty confident that we can get this completed by next April? If we don't have a harsh winter, early winter, late fall, late winter?
As long as weather is conducive.
Chris, you might want to come up to the mic, and I can certainly help out as well.
I mean, I know that, you can't control the weather, but it'd be great that if we can, that for the spring, when the girls and the guys start practicing again, that'll be ready to go.
That is the goal. And yeah, again, the thing with Russell and with Leggett that I appreciate in that relationship, as issues come up, they are on the ball. They're working with contractors. They're looking for alternative solutions. You're right. Sometimes we can't control conditions. If we have a terrible fall weather-wise, terrible winter, terrible spring, it's going to impact those projects. But again, they've tried to create a timeline that gets it turned over to us in order to, move forward. Even if it runs a little bit delayed and we have to look at some alternatives to get them practicing before they occupy the field, I mean, we're going to get that done. They're going to be playing games on this next year, no doubt.
Good. So the Bruner project's probably going to be a little more involved since we have to tear existing water lines out or are they,
Right.
the way I was reading it, it's kind of, they can leave those in there and just disconnect them, or they're going to take the whole thing out?
Yeah, they'll abandon parts of it, but they'll tear it out under where the turf will be placed. They won't tear it all the way back to the line, but wherever the turf will be, in order to get the base in there correctly, they'll have to tear that part of it out, and then they can abandon the rest.
Okay. So we still looking at putting some kind of logo in the middle, in the outfield?
That'll be part of the conversation.
Okay.
And those fields will have, what, Muscovision as
Yep,
part of the lighting
yep,
system?
yeah, that we failed to mention, yeah, and Musco, the lighting for that is all set. They'll have Musco Vision and brand new LED. Burners will be retrofitted LED lights on existing poles, and obviously softball will be brand new LED lights.
You're going to be amazed at the lighting that they're going to have.
Yeah.
It's going to be direct lighting, no spillage off to there. So the field itself will be lit, and it'll just seem like dark everywhere else, but the field is lit itself. It's
And
pretty
significantly
amazing.
less cost and.
Yeah, I think I sent Clint the cost savings of Bruner alone was a 25-year estimate of Bruner right now is $175,000 based on like 300 hours of use, and the new estimated cost is like $10,000 for 25 years.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's something that, like I said, the community and the school district should be proud of. So, thanks.
Thank you. So any more discussion? Okay, all those of you who are in favor of approving the contract award recommendation for Muscatine CSD softball field addition and baseball field renovation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. So next item on our agenda is to approve the purchase of a 2021 Chevrolet 2500 cargo van from J.D. Power in the amount of $34,795. What are the wishes of the board?
I make a motion to approve the purchase of the 21 Chevrolet 2500 cargo van from J.D. Power in the amount of $34,795.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. All those of you in favor of approving the purchase of 2021 Chevrolet 2500 cargo van from J.D. Power in the amount of $34,795, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay. Next item is to approve the contract with River Valley Cooperative for the installation of 2,000-gallon gas tank and 75,000 gallons of propane for $99,000. What are the wishes of the board?
I make a motion to approve the contract with River Valley Cooperative for the installation of a 2,000-gallon gas tank and the 75,000 gallons of propane in the amount of $99,000.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
So having this, is this going to, this 2,000-gallon tank, we can buy gas in bulk, and that was going to save us quite a bit of money?
Yes, eventually, when working with them, the propane, we just did out for the whole year. It gave us the cheapest price. We kind of knew how much we used. Gas, we don't know. So the gas, we do basically use credit cards and receipts still with regular gas, which, Tom doesn't like very much because sometimes not all the receipts come back. But so eventually we'll be able to buy a sustainable 6-month $10,000 worth of gas for a lower price. But just working with them, he said, let's figure out how much you guys kind of use at first and kind of just go with the flow until we can get a good idea, and then we can, and it'll be a cost savings for sure.
Okay.
And they did a really good job with the propane for us. Last year we paid like $1.36 a gallon or something like that, and we're at to $1.29 this year.
Where will those tanks go?
So right out at transportation, we already have 4 propane tanks, a diesel tank. So if you're looking at the propane tanks, they kind of sit up a little higher to the right on the concrete there, and we'll put some Jersey barriers around those and the buses, and all of our maintenance fleet will go out there and be able to fill up too, which eliminates, just a lot of that paperwork things on Tom's end.
So this is a contract, so we like rent these? Is this a rental?
Yeah, it's
thing?
kind of, technically they have to rent it to us, but it's really, they want us to buy the fuel from them.
So do we have a rental associated with this, or do we just pay the annual cost?
We pay $1 to rent the $2,000 gas tank a year. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that going to be above ground then?
Yep. And hopefully that'll be good to go in the next week or so.
And Chris, this contract is a yearly contract? Like, for example, we can renew that every year,
Right.
or are we committing to
No.
5 years? Or
Year by year.
it's
Yep.
year by year? Okay, thank you.
Is there some type of security that people won't try to get in there and mess around with it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we actually are adding some security out at transportation. We didn't have any security cameras, so we're adding 3 cameras on telephone poles monitoring all the busing, along with a license plate ID camera. Right when you come in, there's a light pole by the diesel gas tank, so anybody coming in and out will be able to identify their license plate. And then this will be hardwired to the electrical panel where we shut that off, and the pumps will not be able to run when we're not there. Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chris. Okay, so we have a motion, second, and discussions. All those of you who are in favor of approving the contract with River Valley Cooperative for the installation of 2,000-gallon gas tank and 75,000 gallons of propane for $99,000, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, thank you. Next item is to approve the recommended 2023 legislative resolutions. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to approve the recommended 2023 legislative resolutions.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second. Any discussion?
And I'll just add that in looking at it this year, so what we're talking about is what we're recommending from our district, from the board, to IASB for their platform are items 1, which is student achievement, item 5, which is school safety, item 7, which is mental health, item 11, teacher recruitment and licensure, and item 13, which is supplemental state aid. In looking at those, I think those are always areas that we talk about and prioritize. I also think there are areas that we can get legislators behind. There are other areas in there that we've pursued in the past, and obviously some of those things didn't get where we wanted them to. But again, I think these are important items, so that's why I recommended those for us this year.
And one thing we have to keep in mind is that we as Muscatine School District are recommending those 5 items or resolutions, but again, there are other districts, so we don't know what will be the final, items that they will consider, but that's something that we need to do as a school district, recommend some of those items too.
So what was presented to us is the entire platform, correct? This is ISAB's entire platform.
Yes, there are.
So it's 22 pages.
Right.
And we're looking at, what we're really doing is looking at the resolutions that we want ISAB to
narrow
pursue.
down. We typically
Right.
are asked to pick 4 or 5. You can do more, but we typically do 4 or 5.
Any more discussion? Okay, all those of you who are in favor of to approve the recommended 2023 legislative resolutions, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. So moving forward, we move into our discussion and information piece of our agenda. And item A, first reading of policies 503.4, promotional campaigns / fundraisings. Any discussion or question about that?
This may or may not be technically in the topic area, but I do remember we had a conversation not too long ago about the M in the logo, as in, so if somebody's doing a campaign or fundraising, so to make sure that perhaps that they are using all the same logo or anything?
Well, if it's not a school district sponsored, they shouldn't be using the logo at all.
Okay.
And that was one of the issues, was it was a outside organization that was fundraising using the district logo, so it looked like it was a district-sponsored event, which it was not. And when we addressed that with them, they did make adjustments.
And remember, this is only the first reading, so we have 2 more readings before the board approves that. So if you have any question as you read this policy more and more, please guide your questions to Daphne. I'm sure Daphne will also entertain any question that you might have regarding that policy. Thank you. Item B, review administrative regulations. And I just want to make sure that the one that we are removing and we decided to table is number 2, right?
These are all the administrative.
These are just the
Yeah,
procedures.
but I thought we did talk about the
We tabled the policy.
The policy,
Yes,
okay.
and we'll bring that back in September.
Okay.
And these are some of the,
Even though that some of these administrative regulations can be depending on that policy.
right, well, again, the regulations and procedures are separate from policy. And I think the policy question is more clarification and wording that we'll finalize.
Okay, thank you. So we have 4 of them. Number 1, 505.04E1, student medication forms, self-administration for asthma or other airway constricting medication, or epinephrine auto-injector consent form. 505.4E2, student administration of medication or special health services form. 503.4R1, promotional campaigns, fundraising, administrative regulations. 900.3R1, use of school facilities during school hours, again, administrative regulations. Any question regarding any of those? I see Tom is ready for us, so if there's no question, we move into item C, which is June 2023 financials.
Okay, thank you. And I'll have a accounting supervisor doing a happy dance because of item Q, so thank you for approving that. All right, so June financials. Yeah, the deposit balances for June and July are reconciled and presented for your comparison for the prior months. And then just going through that timeline, so, you know, Finance Department does work year-round. We've had a very busy summer, end of fiscal year in June. I had a position that I replaced July 1st after a 30-year retirement. She had a big relief today, getting her second payroll done on her own, so that was good. And then, of course, we threw in the finance department moving, so some down to the lower level, so with some other changes going on at the admin center. So it's been very busy. 1 month from tomorrow is all of our annual reports are due, so next month I will probably be kind of doing the final report on our certified annual report. I will jump ahead then to October 12th. It's not an action item, but it is just when our FY23 audit will be happening on site. So that process actually begins before October 12th. They're just on site for that one day, but we will have ongoing audit work papers going back and forth starting probably right after September 15th. In fact, we do have some things going on right now. And then, of course, you're aware of the November 7th date, and that causes our second meeting of the month to be back 1 week, so November 20th, the third Monday of the month because of the election. And so I just wanted to make sure those items get on that agenda. Then we'll be doing those limited English proficiency allowable costs for FY23. By that time, we'll have our, budget enrollment. Then we'll have some annual action items regarding those things. So, looking ahead to 2024, we will have, I believe, I don't have it completely ironed out yet, but I think this year, or for FY20, 25, we're going to have a couple public hearings to certify our budget. So stay tuned for that. I'm not exactly sure. I've not wrapped my brain around how that all is going to shake out. But so that is our timeline. Again, I went through the reconciliations. No big red flags on those the last 2 months. Now, you're going to notice our cash balances are going to show significant decreases, and that's simply because we get our final revenue, state aid, in June, and we've already received all of our property tax payments, so we're finishing out paying everybody. Basically, July and August, we're finished paying out teacher contracts for the year, so all of that is really related to FY23. So looking ahead to page 4, this is our revenue and summary expenditure. So I would say we're probably like 95% done with, getting our revenues and expenses recorded. We are the next several days here. We'll be reconciling, making sure things got into the right slot and everything, and comparing. I do a lot of comparison of FY23 with FY22 to see what is funky. So a lot of that will be going on. So there's your comparison. If you'd like to compare that with the prior year at this time, that's on page 5. So page 6 is going to be that budget comparison of our actual expenditures to our published budget, which is something you have to that I have to monitor for you. And so this, like I said, with almost being complete with expenses being recorded, we are I don't foresee any issues because we did amend that second to the right-hand column. We amended in May to those dollar amounts, and you can see we were under, obviously 100% is the goal in those 4 functional categories. So then that was page 6. So page 7, these 2 pages, the next 3 pages are really looking at the general fund, because that's what I basically focus on every month. You can see that in local revenues, we had a significant increase in interest income. For obvious reasons, I think you all are aware that, interest rates have gone up, and that has affected our savings and so forth, so that It's one of those areas of miscellaneous income where it's not, the revenue is not designated to go towards anything specific. Most miscellaneous income is designated for specific purposes. So I would say that I'll jump down to the federal revenue where you see the CARES ESSER 2, 3, and the ESSER 3 learning loss set aside. Last year was 3.1 million. This year that just ended was about $6 million. So a lot of that ESSER 3 and some of that ESSER 2 was related to HVAC work that got transferred to the capital projects, which I put that on the agenda whenever we do transfer that money. But that has to be recorded in the general fund. So that's why that amount is significant, because a lot of that work got done this last fiscal year, and there's still more federal ESSER dollars this coming year. So we do have I shared with Clint and with the rest of the directors the balance of our ESSER dollars and where that's going, and then beginning planning for the next year. So our revenues did increase about 6.4% from 59.2 million to about 63 million. So significant amount of that is that federal revenue. Page 9 are our expenditures, and again, we saw a 9.2% increase in expenditures. So, like I said, we'll be starting in the next several days here, finishing up. We have a lot more to do, but we will get it done. I did provide 2 graphs for you preliminarily, so let me stress that at the top. It says preliminary FY23. This is one of our financial indicators, our solvency ratio. And there, again, you've seen this before. What is the solvency ratio? How is it calculated? So we did take probably will take a small decrease in that. So that all has to do with cash and fund balance and, revenues and expenses. So not alarmed that it went down. Our cash reserve levy wasn't as high as it has been in the past. And then, we're right at what I would say, let's see, in FY22, we ended at 19.2, and you can see there at the bottom, I should have changed that to FY22. Those are statewide FY22 numbers. At the bottom, you can see that we are right there, almost at the median, but probably a little less than state average compared to other school districts in the state. The last page then, another financial indicator is our unspent authorized budget in the general fund, and we're probably going to have a little bit of an increase. Again, that's preliminary. I don't have final numbers. One of those areas that I bring to you every year is that special education balance. So I don't have that solidified yet. So I just still have an estimate in there. So pretty decent looking there on those 2 financial indicators preliminarily for FY23. So as I said, we'll be spending the next several weeks, big day, September 15th, with states having to certify the certified annual report, the special education supplement, as well as the annual transportation report. So we'll be busy, but I would be available if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Anybody have any question for Tom?
Go ahead. No? Okay. All right.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, with that, we move into item D, announcements, meetings, events. August 16 through 18, 23, all teachers in service. August 21, 22, Muskie Transition Days. August 23rd, first day for students. September 4th, Labor Day, no school. September 5th, Riverbend Food Bank, 2900 Mulberry Avenue, September 11 at 6 o'clock p.m. here at the City Hall lower level. We'll have the community conversation. And then same evening at 7 o'clock, we have the regular board meeting here in the Chamber Hall. Any addition to any of these announcements, meeting, and events? No? Okay. So do we have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Those of you who are in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Oppose? Okay, thank you and good night, everybody.